Take up the Ark of the Covenant. The Book of Joshua, chapter 3, verse 6, entering the Promised Land. In brief, passage. The Book of Joshua, chapters 3 and 4. Theme, entering the Promised Land. Setting, 14th and 13th century BC, banks of the Jordan River. Key figures. Moses, leader of the Israelites who has brought them to the edge of the Promised Land. Joshua, Moses' lieutenant and God appoints to lead the Israelites after the death of Moses. God gives Joshua the gift of invincibility in battle. Caleb assists Joshua in leading the Israelites to the Promised Land. When Moses dies just one step away from Canaan, the land promised to Abraham and his descendants as an everlasting possession. Genesis chapter 7, verse 8. There is an obvious successor, Joshua's faithful lieutenant. God tells Joshua to prepare to cross the Jordan River. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave nor forsake you. The Book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 5. Relatively little is known about Joshua's background. He is an Ephraimite, descended from Jacob's son Joseph, who had been born in Egypt. Like the other Israelites, he had followed Moses out of the country when the Exodus began. Joshua was unquestionably Moses' most faithful disciple, as Exodus chapter 33 puts it. He did not leave the tent. He was chosen to go with Moses to Mount Sinai, where God issued the Ten Commandments, and along with Caleb was one of the 12 spies sent to scout out Canaan. The first mention of him in the Bible is in the book of Exodus, chapter 17, verses 9 through 16, which tells how Moses chooses Joshua to lead the Israelites in the battle against the Amalekites at Rephidim, most likely a broad valley now called Wadi Pharaon, about 25 miles from Mount Sinai. Joshua was to win many more victories for the Israelites. Crossing the Jordan. When the time comes for the Israelites to enter the Promised Land, Joshua and Caleb are ready. The Israelites, now camping by the banks of the Jordan River, are more hesitant. In the spring, the Jordan River, swollen by the rains and the snow melt from Mount Hermon, is in flood. It is easy for two spies to make their way across the river, as detailed in the book of Joshua, chapter 2, verse 23. But now an entire nation must ford it. For 3 days they wait, then God gives Joshua orders for the Israelites to cross the river. The people follow God's commands, and as God promised, a miracle occurs. Just as the Red Sea had parted for Moses when he led the Israelites out of Egypt, the swollen river ceases to flow. At Adam, a place 19 miles upriver, the Jordan's waters piled up in a heap, chapter 3, verse 16, and the riverbed is soon dry. While the priests stand with the Ark of the Covenant in the middle of the riverbed, the Israelites cross over on dry ground. When the crossing has been completed, Joshua orders one man from each tribe to pick up the large stones from the middle of the riverbed and carry them to the far bank. Once they have done this, the priests carry the Ark of the Covenant to the other side. The parallels with Moses' parting of the Red Sea 40 years previously clearly shows that Joshua has taken up Moses' mantle as God's instrument. It shows the Amorite and Canaanite kings the power of the Israelites' God. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, where you will lack nothing. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 7 through 9. Keeping the covenant. Even though the Israelites are in enemy territory and therefore in peril, the first thing Joshua does once they have set up camp at Gilgal, 1 mile east of Jericho, is to use the stones collected from the Jordan River to commemorate their miraculous crossing and remind the Israelites that God keeps his promises when they keep his law. Joshua then follows God's command to make flint knives, chapter 5, verse 2, and circumcises all the men who have not fulfilled this everlasting sign of God's covenant with Abraham during the 40 years in the wilderness. Joshua knows that a promise may be deferred by God as it was after the Exodus, if the Israelites disobey God's law. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they revered him all the days of his life, just as they had revered Moses. The significance of the camp at Gilgal. Located on the eastern border of Jericho, Joshua chapter 4, verse 19, Gilgal is the name the Israelites gave to the camp they set up after crossing the Jordan River. It remains an important base for them during their conquest of Canaan. They set out from and returned to Gilgal after a number of key victories, including the fall of Jericho, the destruction of the royal city of Ai, and the defeat of Amorites at Gibeon. In Gilgal, God orders the circumcision of all men born since the Exodus, after which he says to Joshua, "Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you," chapter 5, verse 9. After this, it is the site of the first Passover celebration in the Promised Land. The tabernacle stays in Gilgal until the conclusion of Jonathan's quest of Canaan, at which point the Israelites move west to Shiloh, chapter 18, verse 1, and the tent of meeting is set up there. Later in the Bible, Saul was crowned king at a place called Gilgal, First Book of Samuel, chapter 11, verse 15. This is widely believed to be the same location as the Israelites' camp, although agreement is not unanimous among biblical scholars.